A student pilot flying a Cessna 172 violated the LA International airspace, almost crashing into an airliner. And that hit kind of close to home to me because the first thing I thought of was an accident that happened in the 70s at an airline that my aunt used to work at. Except in that case, the Cessna ended up colliding with this Boeing 727, which ended up crashing in downtown San Diego. Now, the Cessna 172 is not only for student pilots. You can have it as your own personal plane. It's a great plane to fly. It's battle tested, if you will. That is the plane that I learned to fly on, and it can take all kinds of abuse, especially on landing, because I essentially assaulted that landing gear for all of my hours during flight school. The thing to know about LAX is the airspace around it is considered Bravo airspace. And the reason they give it this special classification is to protect you as an everyday person when you're flying into LA to visit grandma, or whatever wholesome activities you're planning when you're flying into LA. I mean, it is the city of angels. The FAA created these restrictions around the airport to allow for the bigger planes to be able to come in because we're going at a faster pace. And the reason why I'm telling you this before you even listen to the audio is because you need to understand exactly what's going on. Otherwise, this first part of the audio is not going to make any sense. That big airspace, that Bravo airspace, is set up in order for us to be able to safely come in and land. And you can get in there with a smaller plane, but you have to request permission to get in there. And there are some requirements that you need to have in order to go through that airspace. And that is to make them safe in the small plane or whatever plane it is that they're flying through there. And also make us safe, if I say us, airline pilots that are flying in there, because we're used to working at a different rhythm and pace, and they'll be stacking planes in close together that have similar speeds. And if you're coming in a small plane like a Cessna 172, your plane speed is not going to be anything close to the speed of a commercial airliner. See, a Cessna like this might be landing at a speed of, let's say, 60 knots. And just the other day we came in, we were very heavy, it was very windy, and our speed coming in was 180 knots. So we're literally triple the speed as we're coming in to land. That doesn't mean that they can't space people out, doesn't mean they can't come in there, but there are certain requirements, and you 100%, especially if you're in a small plane like this doing the type of flying that they're doing, you have to get special permission before you come in there for the exact reason why you're going to see in this video. So in this video, we have two planes. We have this Volaris Airbus A319 with the call sign Costa Rica, and then we have this Cessna whose call sign is just the numbers on the tail. Now this Volaris plane wants to come in here and land at LAX, and the Cessna wants to land at a very close by airport here in Hawthorne. And if you've ever wondered, what does the chart look like around this airport, Hawthorne LAX, that this pilot in the Cessna is looking at? Well, it looks like this, which of course is just super easy to read, especially when you're flying by yourself and you don't have a lot of experience. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, here's the audio.
Costa Rica 4090, maintain 170 knots until Lima.
170 knots into Lima, Costa Rica 4090.
4090, contact Los Angeles Tower at Lima on 120.95.
Roger that, 2095. You have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There are two different types of flying that you can do when you go fly. The first is what Costa Rica is doing. He's essentially on a flight plan where air traffic control babysits them, watches to keep planes away from them, and gives them all the vectors they need in order to safely get in and land at the airport. If you've ever ridden on a commercial airplane, you've been on that type of a flight plan, and that type of flight plan is called an IFR flight plan. There's another way to fly though if you don't want to do that, and that's called a VFR flight plan. If you saw that video of me and Stella flying around, that is basically a VFR flight plan. There was nothing filed about where we were going to go, and as you can see from Stella, it is a lot scarier for people to be on those types of flights, especially when I'm the one that's flying you. Those planes, when you go fly on a VFR flight plan, all it means is that you're not getting the care from air traffic control like you are on an IFR flight plan. There's a lot of other differences, but that's one of the big ones that's going to apply right here. Because if you're on a VFR flight plan, you're going to be able to just take off and say like, oh, I just want to go fly up the coast of California. You don't have to follow any roads in the sky like you do when you're on an IFR flight plan. But when you're on that VFR flight plan, you can kind of fly wherever you want, and it is on your own responsibility to stay out of the places you're not supposed to go, like the Bravo airspace that I talked about earlier. So you have this guy just cruising, trying to get to his airport, and then he gets in trouble. So that was the audio of what was going on with Costa Rica as they were coming in. Here's what's happening on the other side with this pilot that's in the Cessna.
Our tower, November 53440. Other aircraft calling out from Tower, go ahead.
440, come in with information.
That's 53440, where are you, sir?
Sorry, radio must broke up just off Compton, about 2 miles, right just east of the airport.
That's 440, ident.
So this pilot sounds like he knows what he's doing. He's telling them where he's at, which should have been the initial check-in, but doesn't matter. He knows roughly where he's at in the grand scheme of things, and he could have a GPS that's on his plane, or he could just be looking out his window because it's sunny Southern California and the weather's like almost always nice. But he knows where he's at. So he sounds like he's pretty competent, pretty situationally aware of where he's at in the grand scheme, because this airspace around LA, like you saw on that chart, is pretty complicated. So you need to know exactly where you're at. From what he's saying, it sounds like he's here, about 2 miles east of Compton Airport, and he's trying to get to this airport right here. To be honest with you, before I made this video, I didn't even know Compton had an airport. So he's obviously, and I've flown into LA a lot, and I never even knew that there was one there. But if you're doing what he's doing, general aviation called GA flying, you're going to know about all these different places to go, because you're going to need those landmarks, and you're going to need to give references to the controllers because they're not watching you. And so that's why the controller's asking, well, where are you? Which one are you? When I call to check in, if you've heard me or listened to any air traffic control, we're just checking in with our call sign, and they know exactly which plane we are. But when you're just calling in like he's doing, they don't know. They're not really paying attention to you. So he had to do the ident, which basically sends a signal to the controller so the controller can see, oh, this is the plane that he's talking to. Watch what happens.
Verify your altitude.
Altitude 3,000, leveling off, 440.
That's 440. Okay, sir, you are actually in the class Bravo. Contact SoCal approach immediately. 124.3.
So essentially that's something you never ever want to hear, is that real immediate. You don't ever want to hear somebody say that. Now, what is surprising to me here is the controller didn't give him a heading to go onto and then tell him to go. Meaning, hey, turn right, heading, I don't know, 300, contact SoCal approach on this frequency, to start getting him out of that area. That is typically when I've heard it, because like I've heard somebody go into airspace, let's say over Washington, D.C., they get on the radio, a different person that's a military person will get on the radio in a very stern sounding, much more stern than that controller, will tell them what to do and then give them a frequency, and then they're going to get a phone number. It's the combo. But I'm surprised the controller didn't say fly heading this and contact this frequency. He just said like, you need to contact this frequency right away. But by giving him a heading, that would be getting him out of that area, because he obviously didn't mean to go in there, and the controller wants to get him out of there for the safety of all the other planes that are trying to come in and land in that Bravo airspace for LAX. So check out what happens next.
Los Angeles, Costa Rica for 090, we have a traffic advisory, and we are descending.
Costa Rica 4090, affirmative. I'm not talking to that aircraft.
We are now clear of conflict, and we continue the approach. Costa Rica for 090 at 0333.
Wind 240 at 11, runway 25 left, clear to land.
Sir, 25 left, Costa Rica for 090. We have to descend a lot of out of the glide slope.
You're getting, are you receiving the glide slope, you said?
No, I said we had to descend from the glide slope for that reason.
Okay, yes, we are filing a report. I'll let you know if I need any more information. That aircraft violated our airspace.
Roger that, thank you. Continue the approach, 25 left, Costa Rica for 090.
Now you may have heard me talk about this TCAS system. We call it the TCAS system, Traffic Collision Avoidance System. And basically what that is, an R plane, it's looking for all the other planes that have these transponders on, which is basically how air traffic control it's one of the ways that they're keeping track of us. So it will look at all the other planes that are around you, the TCAS system will, and if you have two different planes that have this specialized TCAS system that we have on an airliner, it will give one plane to go up, one to go down, or one to stay the same and one to go up, or whatever. They'll talk to each other, and then they'll tell us, the pilots, what to do. If I have it on my plane and you're flying in a Cessna 172 that doesn't have that, it's not going to be able to tell you what to do. It's just going to tell me what to do. So if it sees you above me but close to me, it's going to tell me go down. It's going to say descend. And what it looks like is this. This is basically saying this red box is the danger area, get away from that red box. So it would just be to descend slightly to get away from it. The problem is that you will see and hear it will say traffic, traffic. It will make this call, but then it will say descend. And when it gives you that, you've got to now disconnect everything and go down. And it's startling. And I've seen it happen in the simulator and in real life. And if you get, it can get startled and you can get aggressive, meaning you go, oh, descend, and you think you're moments from impact. And I've seen that in the simulator where someone just goes and just buries the nose down. And if you're 2,500 feet in the air, you don't want to bury the nose down. So something that's going on a lot now in training is they're putting us in the situation where you see the traffic or you can't see, maybe you're in the clouds, but it will say that there's traffic there, and then you just disconnect, and smoothly get away from it. Like the passengers, if you're flying passengers, shouldn't really even notice that this happened. They will notice that we're going down maybe a little quicker, but they're not going to notice. But if you just slam and bury the nose, they're going to notice because your flight attendants are going to go hit the ceiling. So you don't need to do that. It thinks far enough in advance to allow for you, if you're not a fast thinker, to disconnect, and then like slowly push down. It doesn't need to be disconnect and then bury, just so you know. Now he said something here which I've never really heard before, and that's when he says this 0333 part.
Customer commercial 90 at 0333.
Now I don't know if that's a call that they're supposed to make. Essentially what you're supposed to do is follow the instructions from the resolution advisory, which is part of the TCAS system. So you get a TCAS and then you have an RA, resolution advisory, which it tells you, go down. So you follow that RA, descend, and then it will tell you clear of conflict. When it tells you clear of conflict, then you're also going to let air traffic know, hey, we're clear of conflict and we're resuming to our altitude. I'll tell you if you're just in normal cruise, or maybe resuming the approach if that's what you're doing. But it will give you that descend, and then you'll follow that until you're safely away from it, and then it will tell you, okay, you're safe now, and then you can go back to whatever your last assigned thing was. So that takes precedence over everything else. And all that he's saying here when they're talking about descending below the glide slope,
We have to descend a lot of the glide slope.
is they're flying below this imaginary line that takes you from wherever you're at in the air to the runway. It gives you just a nice, smooth descent path. And this pilot that's talking on the radio sounds like he's doing very well. He's not freaked out or rattled, which, you know, you should keep in mind. He's not freaked out or rattled, just like, hey, just letting you know or complying with this RA, which is the call you're supposed to make, because air traffic control is going to see you doing something that is not what they gave you the clearance to do, which was cleared to come in and land at the airport. If you start going down, they need to know what you're doing. So you say, we're following this resolution advisory, we're complying with the RA, and then you say, hey, we're clear conflict, we're going back to the approach. So this pilot is doing, in the Costa Rica plane, is doing everything right. The Cessna guy, not so much. But essentially, right now the plane is here. Because there's this other Cessna plane in front of them, they have to go below this imaginary descent path. And then once they're below it, they can either climb back up to it and then go down, or if they wanted to, just go straight, catch it again, and continue down to the runway. It's going to depend on the airline as far as what's classified as a stable approach. Can you do this and still be stabilized? Yeah, I guess you technically could. Is it really a big deal? No, it sounds like they descended enough to get away from them. They don't sound rattled, and now they're going to either go straight, catch that glide slope, and continue back down, or maybe go back up. It just kind of depends, and that's really at the discretion of the pilots. Again, I'm guessing it's probably a clear day, so they're able to see that they're staying away from any buildings, and they will be able to re-intercept that glide path and go in and land, and hopefully nobody on board noticed, because if you saw your flight attendant shoot up to the ceiling as you're getting ready to land, you're going to know there's a problem. So while that's all going on with the control tower at LAX, here's what's happening with the Cessna as he's trying to figure out what's going on.
Hotel November 53440.
53440, go ahead.
I believe I might have busted your Bravo inadvertently. We were trying to come into Compton. They directed us to Hawthorne, and I might have busted you. I was trying to call and make sure I'm okay.
Where are you at?
Just out of Bravo now. Near turning back Compton.
40, nobody tagged you up. They haven't said anything to me.
All right, sir. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't mean it. I was diverted and got a little turned around.
440, Roger. Nobody tagged you up, so you should be all right.
Roger, thank you very much.
Well, in case you're wondering, it wasn't okay. No, he definitely, you can't go violate that Bravo airspace and have a plane do a resolution advisory and then just be like, well, that's on me, and let's all forget about it. However, what I really do like about this pilot is he has a great attitude. He's not saying, oh, the controller did this to me and I messed up and he messed me up. No, he's just saying like, hey, I made a mistake and I violated this airspace, and am I in any trouble? Now, this controller doesn't see it yet, probably because the other controller hasn't filed the report and attached it to them. I'm guessing, I don't know what goes on in that wizardry that happens in air traffic control behind the scenes, but they haven't attached that to that plane that he's going to be in trouble. But 100% he's going to be in trouble for what happened. But if you notice, listen to what he said here.
All right, sir, I just wanted to make sure I didn't mean it. I was diverted and got a little turned around.
People make mistakes and people are human. So if you're out flying and you make a mistake, doing this attitude is going to go a lot better than the people who go like, I didn't mean to do it, or it's not my fault. Just owning up and saying like, I messed up, because people make mistakes. I make mistakes. I make mistakes when I fly all the time. The only people who don't make mistakes are the people who are in my comment section or any comment section that are like, you didn't properly use this grammatical word, or things like that. They'll write a whole paragraph about this thing that I didn't properly say, or that I didn't properly use the right word. I used gas instead of fuel. Like, dude, really? That's what you're gonna do with your time? Those people right now are sitting on their grandma's couch just screaming for meatloaf so they can get a nice full belly in them before they leave a comment on this video. Something else to mention about people leaving comments on my video, if you want to leave a comment, I don't really care if it's negative. It doesn't really hurt my feelings. But if you're going to put a link, your comment gets deleted. So I don't really delete comments because I got 80 million other things to do, like this full-time job that I have flying, along with making these videos, and just a bunch of other things. So I don't have time to go in there and start policing comments. I don't really care. You've seen me make videos about all the mean things people say about me. So it's really hard to hurt my feelings growing up as a pasty white kid. Growing up that's skinny with red hair. I mean, I've heard it all my whole life, so I'm kind of over it now. But if you're going to leave a link saying like, hey, this is what I think you look like, and there's like a link to Lord Voldemort, I'm not going to see that because the link is going to make it so your comment disappears, just so you know. Okay, now back to this video. Here's the other thing. When you look at this chart, it's really easy to understand how someone would make this serious of a mistake. There are so many lines, and that's why airline pilots, myself included, don't like flying under these type of flight rules, VFR, because we're not getting handheld by air traffic control everywhere we go. Like when I went flying with Stella in LA, she was saying like, hey, I just want to stay close to the airport, because she was 100% sure that I was going to kill her. And I was like, yeah, cool, I could do that, takeoff and landing around the airport all day. But if she said, oh, I want to go up the coast, then I would have had to, there's like these corridors that you can fly through, and you got to get up to this thing and fly through this corridor. And one of the guys was explaining it to me, and he was a pilot with like 60 hours, but he had all 60 hours in that area, so he knew everything you needed to do in order to get through this corridor in LA. And I was like, I don't know what you're saying, and I don't want to be one of these people violating the airspace. So when she said, I just want to circle around the airport, I was like, perfect, love it. Let's circle around the airport. I can live with that. But you should know that at one time I busted Bravo airspace in a Cessna 172, just like this guy, and it was right here on this little clip of a shelf. Air traffic control sent me over that direction, and I was supposed to like head that direction, but stay like one side of the street until I got past this hill, and I don't know, I got rattled because I was on my very first check ride ever, and I was looking at my chart and I was following the road and trying to get past this hill, but then air traffic control saying something to me and I got nervous, and so I was just like, I kind of went down the middle, and the examiner had, I don't know, like some early level Garmin something, and he was looking at it and he goes, show me on the chart where we're at right now. And I pulled up the chart and I pointed it to him. I'm like, we're right here. And he goes, oh, yeah, okay, it's kind of hard to see there, but you violated the Bravo airspace. I was like, what? He goes, yeah, you violated the Bravo. You see, you cut this corner right there. And I was like, but I went over this street here. He goes, yeah, you can't really see it on that chart, but on this thing that I brought along with me, I could see it, and you cut it by about 100 feet. You cut in there. And that was basically the end. I failed my check ride, my very first check ride of this career that I wanted to do. In the first 20 minutes, I had a big failure. Anyways, we went on to do the rest of the check ride and all the maneuvers and all the other things that you have to do. And at the end, he was like, oh, you know, you have a really great attitude about this whole thing. You're going to do really great in aviation. That just goes to show you that if you make a mistake, anything in life, but in aviation, if you just have a good attitude about it and take responsibility for it, it's going to be a lot easier. Because I could have fought him over it and said like, no, you can't do that because you couldn't see it on here. So how am I supposed to see it? Because my plane doesn't have that, because my plane had like nothing. It barely had a radio in it. But the reality is I just said, okay, I just took it like a man, and I just said, I'm sorry. And he goes, yeah, no worries. You didn't have any bad intentions. You're not in any trouble, but you did fail that check ride. But he said, you know, him saying that, hey, your good attitude is going to help you a long way in aviation, I thought that was a good sign. But the joke's on him, because I'm not even a real pilot, according to the people in the comments. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.